me just double check everything. It's been a little bit kind of rusty. I got that. Hey, it's working. Wow. All right, we're good. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Out of the Fast Lane podcast. I am your host, Brady Hauser. On today's show, we're kind of starting a new series as our one guest sits there drinking his beer. We'll get to that in a second. But no, the Racing Announcers Group was created a couple months ago by Justin St. Louis, Dave Moody, and a couple of me, Mike, and Todd that are in here. Not me, but we've all contributed to it. And it was created a couple months ago just to have a bunch of announcers come together and kind of just chat about the trade and be curious with everybody and get to know each other. And I kind of suggested this idea about a week ago, asking the announcers if they want to come on and just not chat anything announcing and just come on and chat whatever. And sure enough, a lot of the announcers said yeah. And so our first episode is here tonight. So why don't we introduce our guests here? Our first guest was supposed to be Hunter Jordan. Hunter is an announcer at State Line Raceway, former announcer at Thunder Mountain Speedway, but Hunter is on his varsity baseball team, and he's the starting shortstop. They had a game that was supposed to play yesterday. Mother Nature canceled it, so they had to play it today, and he can't tell his coach no. But let's get to our other two guests. First guest is a gentleman who just got done announcing at Bridgeport Speedway this past weekend with the Super Dirt Car Series. Of course, he has done work for Race Pro Weekly. He's worked at Albany, Saratoga. He's done work with the World of Outlaw late models, and now more recently the new voice of the Super Dirt Car Series, Mike Warren, joining us with the show. Mike, thanks for coming on.
Of course, Brady. Hey, always fun to do a lot of these, man. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun time tonight.
Now, we just got done with Bridgeport with the Super Dirt Car Series. How did everything go there?
It went pretty well. That was actually the first time I've led a Dirt Vision broadcast by myself, so there was actually a lot more nerves going through it because I either was with Ruben or with Johnny, either at World Finals or that. So it was still a whole new thing. And really, it was 2 months between the last race of Volusia and Sunday night. So we're still working out a lot of kinks, and there's a lot of rust I had to shake off. But I think we're, heading in the right direction. It's just hope Mother Nature doesn't keep getting in the middle of some of these things.
Absolutely. And our second guest here, he has done a lot of things, a lot of trades. He's kind of a jack of all trades. He's done spotting. He's a race car driver himself. He's done monster trucking. Of course, he's an announcer. Going to be making his MRN radio debut this summer with MRN, of course, at Road America in the Xfinity Series race. Todd Morey joining us on the show. And Todd, I got to ask, how excited are you to get to do this MRN opportunity coming up here in the summer?
Put applications in with MRN for 20 years, so pretty happy. It's something that's obviously it's everybody's dream to just keep on moving up, and it's something I'm looking forward to for sure. My wife asked me the other day, she's like, "Are you nervous?" And I'm like, "Not yet." I mean, it's the end of July, so there's a lot that has to happen between now and then. A lot of gigs, a lot of things I'm doing, but I concur with Mike. Mother Nature can quit this crap. Yeah, I'm tired of it.
and looking at the weekend, it's looking like another looking like another damp one here in upstate New York.
Yeah, agreed. And I did look. I'm trying to get on track. It looks like the only track that might get in, and this is just me talking. I'm not a meteorologist at all, but it looks like the weather will hit Albany, Saratoga at midnight on Friday. That might be the track that gets in. So my goal is to load up and go to Albany, Saratoga. Never raced there. I've announced there. Never raced there, and go try it. See what happens.
Mike's announced there. I've done a little bit of work there. Albany, Saratoga. We're all pretty familiar with that place. How did you all get introduced to that place? I'll start with you, Mike, because you've been there more recently. How did you get introduced to Albany, Saratoga?
Oh, Albany, Saratoga, that was my Friday night home watching the CBRA stuff growing up for the whole time. So when it went back to the dirt, I was already working at Lebanon with Dan and John. So Lyles just asked, "Hey, do you want to come on as the second guy at Albany, Saratoga?" And it was like that until I ended up moving south down here.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Todd? How were you? You said you sent me your announcing story, which I only wanted.
I thought that's what you wanted.
your recent announcing. So I asked both of these guys, send a little information to me just so I have a little bit of info about their announcing careers, and Todd decided to send me an essay.
I started when I was 12 and I just went from there. So I started announcing at Dodge City Speedway with the kart stuff and Caroga Creek Raceway as well in Ephrata. And Bruce and I went to Albany, Saratoga to watch, talked to Bruce Richards, and he had a kart track in the back. So I did all 3 kart tracks. I did Albany, Saratoga for him, Dodge City for Paul Montanaro, and then Caroga Creek as well. So that's how I started with Albany, Saratoga, and then did some pit road, some pit area stuff at Albany, Saratoga, announced a couple of races there, and then actually did speed sport there a couple of years ago.
The kart track, it's no longer there, correct? I've never seen it.
And
that's why I asked.
It was never permitted. So he built it. Built it. I guess I can talk about this story now. I've known about it for a long time. So Bruce built a track just off of turn 2 in the backyard there, off the backstretch. Nice track, really nice. Actually, Kim Dool was the flagger. So that was kind of neat. So Kim was the flagger. I was the announcer. But permits were never pulled to build it. And somebody blew a whistle, and it was no more.
That'll happen. I mean, you got to get the proper permits, I guess.
That's right.
So, Mike, you said you've been around since just growing up as a kid. Were you there when the asphalt track was around?
I was. I did the first year that they went asphalt. I went to a couple of the modified races there, but that was the same time when Glen Ridge really started to peak. And I'll admit, dirt guy, I'll be the first to say it. I'm not as big of a fan of dirt modifieds on pavement. I've tried it. It didn't work for me. So I ended up going to the Ridge every week until Lyle made the switch back to dirt a couple years later.
I've never seen dirt modifieds on an asphalt track.
That was Mike, wasn't that a Glenn Donnelly idea years back?
Originally it was because and it's actually, I think you can find it on Dirt Vision right now, if not on YouTube. There's races from Nazareth on there from about 1991. And you go through that field, there's some guys you'd never expect to see, like Ray Evernham in the race and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
But actually, Mike Perotti had him for the longest time up at Airborne, too. I think it was only small blocks back then, but that was a thing up there also. So it's been around, but you can definitely see the different, it's completely 2 different styles of racing.
Yeah.
That actually came up on Sirius XM 90 the other day. A guy called in to Dave Moody's show, and he said, "I hate these cup cars on dirt." And Dave says, "Well, how about a dirt modified on pavement? It's the same thing. Something was being tried different, a different way to enjoy the sport." And those dirt modifieds didn't belong on pavement at all.
And I mean, that's kind of a debate. Do NASCARs belong on dirt? I mean, we watched the Bristol dirt race. You kind of, if you listen, you're a late model guy, Mike. You've done work with the World Outlaw late models. Jonathan Davenport, you heard him in his interview post race. I'm sure you saw that interview where he said it's more of a show than it is a race. For you guys as the announcers and myself, do you guys think that NASCAR should continue with the dirt on Bristol?
It's tough to say because I want to see the ratings on that Sunday night before anything, because I can probably speak for a lot of us. We were all watching, whether we just to see what it was like, whether we enjoyed it or not. We all had eyes on it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I concur with Mike. I think it's a show. It's something different. Obviously, if it was not profitable for NASCAR, not profitable for SMI, they wouldn't do it. But I mean, the dirt's still down. They're still racing on it. Cletus McFarland just had his Rangers. He had Rangers on dirt. One got some air. I saw a replay of that.
It was not just one. There was I read the thing online. Cletus posted it yesterday, thanking everybody, and he said out of the 100 trucks that they had start, 13 of them flipped.
I want to do it. I would do it.
I would consider it. I would consider it. How about you, Mike? Would you consider it?
I would actually. The Ford Rangers and I think some of the slower cars, I think would be a lot of fun around there. But I will say the sprint cars and the late models, it was cool. It was an awesome spectacle the first 2 years. But when you realize how fast they were going, you kind of have to rethink that a little bit because
scary. Yeah.
Mike, it's interesting you bring that up because a lot of people talk about, take the unrestrict Daytona, unrestrict Talladega. cup car is going to go 230 miles an hour.
Yeah.
We all like speed, but you bring up a good point, Mike, that sometimes things, if you can slow a race down, it's actually better.
Well, Tim McCready, one example I'll give you, Tim McCready multiple times during speed weeks at Volusia, he said, hey, you slow the track down about a second, you're going to see one of the best races. And we really got to that point the last night of the late models down there. And it shows the difference. I mean, these heavy hammer down tracks, yeah, the speeds are great early in the night, but if you can't see multiple lane racing, that's what we're all there for at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed. And you look at the safety aspect too. I mean, you just mentioned, Todd, with the removing restrictor plates from Daytona. There's no way they can do that. We just had this race at hold on. Sky Huber just put in our chat, their late models right now are like 90s NASCARs. Can you guys agree with that?
I don't know.
Let me continue my thought. Let me continue my thought, and you guys can think about that for a second. But when you look at the safety part of it, if you remove restrictor plates from, like you said, they're going to be going 230 miles an hour. We just had a race this past weekend at Talladega, and they were only going 190, and that collision with Larson and Ryan Preece was so bad that in the door that the whole inside roll cage was all bent off of Larson's car. So I mean, that's kind of an interesting take on should we have restrictor plates? I mean, yeah. I'm not we're all dirt guys, but I mean, NASCAR is the top level of racing, and I think it's a good conversation here.
So I'll address what that gentleman said. I didn't see
Sky Huber, he races modifieds at Saratoga. So shout out to him.
So I'll see him Friday. So my thought with that is maybe he's talking about how a dirt late model right now is such a twisted sister. I mean, that left rear is so far inside of the left side sheet metal. There's so much rear steer in them. Maybe that's what he's referring to is the twisted sister. Cause I agree with that for sure. I mean, you look at a cup car in the 90s and early 2000s, and they're just sideways going down the straightaway. So if that's what he's talking about, I agree.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm pulling up a picture here. Definitely looks wise, a late model is nothing compared to the late model nowadays. I mean, it's kind of similar, but not really.
So if you get a picture pulled up from a qualifying session, let's say Atlanta, in a corner with one of those twisted sister cars, the left rear is inside. Actually posted the picture years ago, but the left rear tire. See, this is a little bit too old. You want to go?
Yeah, it's a little. I mean,
this is way
kind of like that. Yeah, I see what you're trying to get.
School. But you'll see those rear end housings twist, and there's so much rear steer in those cars. But yeah, there's a lot of twist in the late model right now too, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree there. So kind of the point of this podcast, because this is the first episode, and you guys are kind of the guinea pigs here, and people are liking it, so that's good to see, and we're going to continue this series. The point is to have a conversation like we are, which is going great. But I do have a couple topics we can bring up. Now, Todd, you've done work with World Racing Group. Mike, you currently work with World Racing Group. I knew the guy as well. The late Rick Ushelman. We lost him, unfortunately, back in October. All of us have met. I've either met him or done work with him. Todd, you've done a lot of work with him. Mike, you've done work with him on the late model side. I'll start with you, Todd. How was your relationship with Rick, and what was the experience getting to work with him like?
That guy was a nonstop joke. He was hilarious. Whether it was
his jokes were terrible.
What you? Some of them we cannot repeat here.
Most you can't repeat.
Yeah, that's right. So whether you were riding down the road with him to the next event, hanging out at dinner, in the booth with a headset on, it's the same Rick Eshelman. He doesn't change. It was just that was the way he conducted himself, and he was a hilarious guy, talented. I'm telling you, the card thing. He would, when we'd announce together, he'd have all these cards and stuff because he was also on at driver sign-in. So he would get all these guys coming up, signing in, yada, yada, and then he's filling out all the information. But he was an encyclopedia. I mean, he would, we did UMP Dirt Car the UMP cars, the World of Outlaw late models, the whole thing down there at Volusia, and he would pull stats that I would look at him and go, how in the world do you know that? And he'd say, it's just in my head, man. It's what he absorbed. He was a sponge. And when he knew something about someone, he would just continue to develop those cards and just have multiple lines and everything on those iconic cards. I think those cards were saved actually by somebody from,
and they were put online as well. Somebody saved them. Maybe Mike knows the name of the gentleman, but
sweet.
Yeah, he went.
Ross, of course.
Yeah, Ross went and posted them online. He went and did a project, took a picture of every single one of them, and put it onto a file online so everybody could look at them. And I was looking at them, and some of the stuff that he had on these things, I was like, "Holy crap! This guy!" The dedication he put into the sport was insane.
Absolutely. I'll let Mike follow up. One last thing I just want to say about Rick is he was the one guy that taught me that humor is okay in race call. Mm-hmm. I was very rigid, very about the book, this sponsor, that sponsor, this driver, yada, yada. And he loosened me up completely. That first year I worked with him at Volusia, completely loosened me up, and we were able to have a great time back and forth. It was awesome to swap a race call with him. That was amazing. But yeah, he's the guy that loosened me up with race call, and it's okay to be funny.
Now, I got to ask you about a story here in a second, Todd, but for Mike, you to follow that up, how was it working with Rick? I mean, he was a legend.
We would, him and I, of course, with the two positions we would have with the series, we'd be calling each other every week, throwing stats back and forth, but there's no way you could get off the phone with them without at least 3 or 4 jokes about somebody coming in. And again, as we mentioned, you can't repeat 90% of them. I know that percentage goes up every time we say it, but it's the truth. But Rick, the one thing is Rick he was one of the nicest guys. He would go out of your way. The only thing that he would go out of your way more than for you is for a dog. No question about that. Every dog he saw, you had to stop and take a picture. There'd be nights. A lot of the nights that you saw I had to do the late model preview was because he was over with a ton of dogs and couldn't do it. And it's the Rick way.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was going to follow up with the story for Todd. Now, I know Melissa, his fiance, and we all know her very well. She kind of hinted the story. She's like, next time you talk to Todd, you got to ask him the story about the one time the dog fought back. And I want to hear it from you because you were there.
Oh my God. So we're walking through the pits, talking to people. It's me, my wife, and Rick and Melissa. And he saw a new dog. He didn't know who this dog was, but every new dog, you got to go visit. You got to say hi. And he's petting the dog. And he gets down close to the dog's face. And he's like, hey, puppy. And this thing grabbed him part of his top lip, part of his bottom lip, and then around his corner of his face. And he threw his head back and he was in pain. He covered it. And I said, Rick, we have to look. You have to announce tonight. And we have to look at this. And it was his entire goatee was full of blood. His face was full of blood. And I said, okay, let's get you washed up, cleaned up, because we have to know do you need stitches? Can you speak? How is this going to work? And the first thing he said is, that was my fault. I didn't know that dog. That was my fault. I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, that's cool, but let's get your face cleaned up. let's see where you're at. And it ended up being like four holes, one through the lip, one over here, one over here, one over here. But it was in his goatee, so you never saw it. You never saw it. It didn't need stitches. It was just holes, and the dog let go. So it was scary at first because I'm like, well, I am announcing this entire night now. His face is ripped off, and then realized it was what it was. But
so
I was there for that.
So note to anybody listening or any new viewers or kids, don't approach a dog unless you know it's friendly.
That's right.
Until you get told otherwise.
Let him sniff your hand. All that. You got to go through the whole spiel there. Yes. Absolutely.
Well, Todd, your dog, on the other hand, your dog's having some health problems, but
yes,
your dog doesn't like me.
My dog doesn't like anybody except like me and my daughter and my wife. That's about it. But we got him on some medication. We're hoping for the best here. We take him back to the vet tomorrow, so he's hopefully we'll get there.
Now, Mike, is there any jokes that you can say on the air that Rick told you that are appropriate?
I can promise you, Brady, the ones that we remember, you can.
That's the thing about Rick. And I was talking to Johnny Gibson on my podcast in the off season. Like Johnny said, it'd be like the most random times. And I'm sure you guys can attest to it. I didn't have Rick calling me weekly like you guys did. It'd be like Johnny would be waking up. He goes, "I'm in Volusia," and he goes, and I would get a call from Rick at 5 a.m. And he would crack a joke that made no sense. And he's like, "I'm trying to sleep, and this guy's here talking about something that has nothing to do with racing." And I think that's just how Rick was. Did you guys get the phone calls at all hours of the day?
Not quite, unless it was the end of a night where we were, it was 2 o'clock in the morning or something, or the end, because he's trying to, be like, hey, make sure you got this tidbit in the story or something like that. Luckily, I did not get the Rick calls at 5 a.m. Now, 9 a.m., different story, but 5, usually not.
How about you, Todd? You knew him well.
I got calls at weird times because we worked together during the pandemic. So we would announce an iRace together, at a weird time, which was that was interesting.
I was going to ask, how was it announcing iRacing?
Yeah, so I thought, hey, this is just another race. I don't realize what's happening behind the scenes, the producers that were involved in that. I went to Charlotte, went to the studio, Dirt Vision studio, and they had Rick and I sit, in different rooms at some times, because you had to be 6 feet apart and there wasn't room, and they were trying to follow protocols, which they did a really good job at that. And then they finally got us set up to where we could do it from home. And so we did a few calls from Dirt Vision Studios, and then I got a setup in a radio station near me. He had a setup from his house. So it was really cool. But yeah, so he'd pick up the flip phone. This is back in the flip phone days. Rick was the last person on earth, I think, to go to a smartphone. But he would say, "Hey, Morey." I'd say, "Yes, Rick." He'd tell me a joke, hit the punchline, and hang up. It was just, I was just ready for it,
I watched him do that to Gibson one day. We were dying. Because I think that was the first time. That's the first and only time I think I've ever heard him do that. But I didn't think he would actually do it to Johnny, but he did.
Yeah. When his joke is over, close the flip phone. That's it. Done.
That's kind of. I should start. I should start doing that with you guys. I should start just calling you and doing that.
I had a phone call from Rick once from a number I didn't know, and I'm like, "Hello." He's like, "Hey, this is Rick. This is my new number." And I'm like, "Why do you have a new number?" "Well, I have a smartphone now provided by World Racing Group and yada yada." I'm like, "Where's Flipper? We need it." He goes, "Flipper has been retired." I can tell you, when that guy got on Twitter, what a following he got immediately.
Oh, yeah.
It just blew up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I don't think I was. When was that? Like 2019, 2020? When did he join Twitter?
You know what? I can check right now.
I want to say it was.
Because I wasn't on Twitter. Yeah. I wasn't on Twitter then. I was still in my young teen life and not on social media much. Yeah, no, I'm reading some of the tweets he posted on there were like, oh my God. It's just, you could tell it was all Rick based.
So I checked, someone has closed down his account.
Yeah.
Which I don't know who had access to that. The only one I can find is one says Rick Eshelman. He's in his dirt car shirt, and it says World of Outlaws late model announcer, not the man himself, you idiot. So anyway,
you think that was him?
I don't know if you can see that, but that's the one. I think that's the one that the World of Outlaws created for him. But the last tweet was July 8th, 2013. And he tweeted.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's that sounds kind of suspicious. Yeah, so that's old Twitter.
He tweeted Chubzilla. So anyway, that's
Chub Frank.
Yep.
Yeah. Even I know that, and I'm not even a late model guy. But yeah, no, and we all miss Rick. Rick's obviously one of the best to work with, even outside of the races. I mean, inside the races, outside the races.
Yeah.
If you had an issue outside of the track, Rick was always there to help. Like for me, Todd, you were at the hospital and I collapsed that long. You were one of the first ones there, but I got a message from him and he was reaching out, and that's just the type of guy he was. And we definitely miss him. But so this podcast, of course, was made by the was kind of created based off the Racing Announcers Group, having you guys announcers on. There was a couple topics in the announcer group that were discussed, and I guess we got to talk a little business here. How important? This is kind of a topic because you just started with you had your gig with Dirt Vision on Sunday. Todd, you've done a lot of broadcasting. How important, in your thoughts, is broadcasting races good for the sport right now? Being on the announcer aspect, you think it's a good thing right now? Is it a bad thing? What's your guys' take on it?
So are you referring to like streaming?
Like having a broadcast at the track. Do you think it's helping out racetracks, or is it?
No. Oh, so like Flow and Dirt Vision, that kind of thing. So I don't know the numbers. And I don't know if Mike does, but I don't know the numbers from like what Flow pays Fonda, what Flow pays Utica, what Dirt Vision pays Albany Saratoga. Paul Small posted something recently about the breakdown of a race night. Actually, I think he shared it, but anyway, it was that the tracks get a small slice of that. I don't think it hurts. Extra coverage can't hurt. Are these broadcast companies, Dirt Vision, Flow, and the others, are they making a ton of money? Yeah, obviously they are. So I think it would be up to promoters to say, hey, you guys aren't giving us a big enough slice of the pie. You need to help us out. For the popularity of the sport, massive. It's worldwide. If you have the internet, you can watch Albany Saratoga Friday night. Right. So on the racer side, you're able to sell more sponsorship, I think, because you can say, hey, it's getting this many views, we think. Someone in California can watch a driver at Albany Saratoga on a Friday night and go, what's that company? He mentioned that company in Victory Lane. So I think on the driver's side, fantastic. Fan side gives you an option. If you're like, I'm feeling under the weather, I'm going to watch on Dirt Vision or Flow. So that's great. The age-old question is, does it hurt attendance? And I don't think it does. But are the tracks getting enough from those broadcast partners? I'm not sure. I'm not privy to that information.
And now, Mike, I'll let you follow up, and then I'll ask the second question here.
Well, I think part of it, you got to start with like the national tours and the weekly racing, for an example, are two completely different topics as well. Because say you're a World of Outlaw Sprint Car fan, for example, well, they come to New York once. You're not going to a race in Indy unless you're making like the plans to travel there. So you're going to watch it on Dirt Vision 9 times out of 10. So you're getting all the eyes there. Weekly tracks, I think it's a little bit different because, like Todd was saying, if you're under the weather, maybe you don't go that time. But I think it's given it more exposure. Like for me, for example, with all these Northeast tracks, while I'm in North Carolina, I can still go back in and watch them now. And that's helps me for preparing, but it also lets me keep track of everything I've kept track of for 20 years, which is kind of nice. So for all those people that do move down in different places, they get to keep an eye on their home tracks as well. But I don't think, from things I've seen the last couple of times, for example, I've been at Albany Saratoga, it's still been packed like it was before the pandemic.
Oh man.
And from what I've seen, just mostly every other track around there's been the same way. So I don't think it's hurting. Like Todd said, I think it's more eyes, and more eyes can never hurt.
Now, as an announcer, how do you balance the broadcast? So you got broadcasting live. Now, a lot of the racetracks that we've worked at or work at, they don't have a specific announcer for the broadcast. So as the announcer, you're announcing the track, being the track PA announcer, plus the announcer at the broadcast. How do you balance it back and forth?
Well, for us right now, like one thing that's made it easier is we put the implementation of the video boards in, which is something new that we've had. So it's an extra piece for the fans. Now they're watching the exact same thing you're watching at home on Dirt Vision. They get to see all the replays also. And I know one thing, like that Le Mans start that we do from the Super Dirt Car Series, a lot of fans, especially at Bridgeport the other night, they were down there taking pictures left and right. Like it's part of the fan experience. So now it's kind of a hybrid. And I know I mentioned this before in the big thing we did with Adam a little bit earlier. It's kind of you are broadcasting for both at the same time now, which is kind of nice, but it wasn't like that even, I would say, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're at a non-dirt vision track. You know, I'm sorry. You're traveling series, Mike, and I'm out of dirt vision for a couple of years. So do all of your traveling series, late model sprint cars, super dirt car series, do they all carry video boards now every track?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The only time we wouldn't bring one, like for example, Wheat Sport and Land of Legends already have one there.
Correct.
So we just look into that one. But yeah, that is something as part of fan engagement that's on every single series now.
So that would be, to me, that's a home run, because you're getting the best of both worlds, because when the announcer is announcing something for dirt vision, it's on the screen and people are looking at that battle. Let's say it's a non-dirt vision track. They're not going to have a big screen. I watched my first broadcast of Fonda Speedway. I was not there. The car, long story short, my car didn't make it. So anyway, I watched from home because I ran out of time. And Chris Moore is announcing, but his cameraman obviously knew what he was saying. And I think that connection helps both sides. So Chris Moore can look everywhere and know, hey, the battle for fourth is hot right now. So he'll kind of say some things to draw the cameraman that way, but he's announcing for the house, and the cameraman helps him look good for flow, in my opinion. So I think the communication of having an experienced camera person that knows the battle's over here because Chris is talking about this or that, he has an earpiece in. I think if you got a camera person that good, you can announce to the house, and that camera guy will make it look good on TV.
Mm-hmm. Now, balancing, so like as a fan, not balancing, but as a fan, from the fan aspect, like if you're watching, say a track doesn't have the video board at home. I mean, yeah, you can probably pull out your own video board right here. But like if say you don't and a crash happens, as an announcer, you're saying, "Oh, check it out on the Flow Racing replay." Do you think that would doesn't that as a fan aspect, wouldn't you think that make somebody mad? Like, "Oh, I should have just bought the pay-per-view and stayed home."
Yeah, so I wouldn't bring up any specific. Now Mike can, because he's got video board provided by Dirt Vision. He can say, "Let's go to the Dirt Vision replay." As a track announcer, I wouldn't say, I would say, let's go back in the day. Let's go 15 years ago. Jim King's at Fonda Speedway. He says, "Let's go to the Bobco replay." Everybody was cool with that because Bobco was just there taping stuff, and I'm going to buy that because I want to
see the replay. Yeah,
right. So now when you say let's go to the Flow replay, or for those of you watching at home on Flow, I don't think I'm going to be ticked off as sitting in the stands, because I can't zoom in live. No. So if it's on Flow and Chris Moore gets to look at it and goes, "Hey, this is actually what happened." Well, maybe I'm ticked off that my driver barreled into that guy. Well, maybe Flow replay shows that he blew a right front tire and had no steering.
Yeah,
and that can be explained right there. So I don't think it's bad.
Okay.
No, right. That was the one thing, Todd, I was going to mention. For years, same thing in Malta. We would be, hey, we got looking at the Bobco video replay. At that time, we'd be the only ones that would have it.
Correct.
But you'd be buying it immediately the next week, especially if it was a big wreck.
Which is a little plug for Bobco to go buy it.
Right. I guess you guys are right. Yeah, that was just one of the topics I was curious, and I'm learning that myself as coming in as the CRSA and doing CRSA, traveling to different racetracks. Some have broadcasts, some don't, and kind of balancing like the broadcast part of it. Like when I go to Fonda, it's like because you got the broadcast and then you got the track announcer, and it's kind of tough. It's kind of both worlds, and I'm kind of learning because I'm new. I'm learning how to kind of balance it. I mean, what did you get? So if I'm trying to balance that, like, what advice would you give me for that? To balance that.
I would say at first, just the more reps you get, the better you're going to get at it. Because 2020, when I think I can speak for Todd too, this was a weird year when everything just started.
Yeah.
Because at every track, remember, before that,
Nobody knew what we're on Zoom
streaming
right now.
wasn't outside of Dirt Vision and the major series. Streaming wasn't a thing in the local tracks at all. So we have been taught to do it one way, looking at the entire racetrack. Well, now we would come in on those nights and there's no fans in the stands. Keep that in mind too. So we're looking at the monitor the entire time, really, and it's a whole different aspect broadcasting the home. So kind of like, and Martin and I both had to learn on the fly, and it was a whole different animal. But the more we got to it, the more, and working with Matt Thomas and those guys, we got better with it. And it's just reps.
It was weird coming out of the pandemic to the point where the performers were allowed there. No fans. Went and announced the World of Outlaw late model race with Rick somewhere in the Midwest. And we're just looking at each other like, this is so weird. There's no concessions. There's nobody. And Mike, you're right. We were told, don't look at the racetrack. Don't worry about it. Because everybody's home. So announce from a monitor. And there you have it. When I did when I announced at Charlotte Motor Speedway, it was weird because a lot of fans are looking at the big screen in the infield. We're trying to announce the entire race like as we see it. And eventually they told us, everybody's looking at the screen, announce the screen. I'm sitting here looking at a 2.5-mile racetrack, and I'm announcing from a screen. It was just so weird.
Yeah, and it was. We do have one fan question here, and it's for Mike. It's from Ray Rogers. Tell us how different it is from weekly at Malta to what you do right now with the Super Dirt Car Series.
Oh, it's a whole different animal. I mean, the whole sponsors thing is still the same, but you're throwing the brakes, something I still have to get used to. It's like the more pomp and circumstance that comes with a series, like obviously the format's different. Qualifying is not a thing on a weekly Friday night. Never has been. Probably have a hard time believing why I would ever go to a qualifying system on a Friday night. But it's just little things. But the thing for me that helps, I've been following these guys for 20 years at this point. Obviously I'm still going through talking to them before every race, getting to know, see if there's anything new, but that background's still there and it makes my job that much easier. And, I've been fortunate that 3 out of the 4 races I've done have come down to the last lap too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I want to say that's huge though. Like you've been around 20 years enjoying racing and you're still walking through the pits. It's so important to walk through the pits, talk to people, how the kid's doing. Who knows? Sometime you'll have a red flag and you have to fill for 4 minutes. Well, you've got notes upon notes upon notes to talk about people, to talk about it, their daily lives. Some of these guys don't race for a living. They do other things. They have families, they have kids, and all that. And that's a huge kudos to you that you're still walking through the pit area, taking those notes. It's important.
Mm-hmm. And memorizing the paint scheme too. I learned that memorizing paint schemes is also
help you.
That'll help you, especially because like Dave Moody said when he came on my show earlier in the off season. For him, for example, being at Daytona, that big wreck happens. There's a lot of smoke. Usually, you can't see what the hell is going on. The only thing you can see is the 1/4 panel or the one little door going through going into the pile up. And you could say, oh, so-and-so is in the pileup because you can see just that that little panel. So I think talking to the people and memorizing paint schemes is important, and then just kind of connecting with everybody.
Interesting conversation I had with Dave the other day. He said that on the radio side of things, he said, don't be too excited to call a wreck too early and get it wrong. On the radio side, that wreck can develop a little bit and people on the radio aren't going to know. So get your stuff straight, as when you feel confident that wreck is that who's in it, what's going on. You can yell trouble or, hey, this is happening in turn 4, there's an incident, but don't dive into this person's involved, that person's involved till you actually know. And on radio, the person's not going to know that you don't know yet. It's okay to let it breathe a little bit.
Or video, you can see it. So video, people can see it.
Right. TV has to talk right away. This has happened, that's happened, that guy's in it. Well, when you got a cloud of smoke in front of you and you're a corner announcer, you probably got to pump the brakes and wait a second to see what's going on.
Yeah, and kind of take a guess on who's involved.
Yeah. So you don't have to guess who's involved.
That too, as a radio announcer, and you'll learn. And I mean, you'll get that experience too. Like if a wreck happens for you with Road America, I mean, you could say it because nobody can see it. It's listening on the radio. They can, unless they're watching on TV as well.
Right.
I mean, I look at that wreck with Daniel Hemrick this past weekend. The amount of smoke that was in the air, like I wouldn't be able to say who was in the wreck because you couldn't see it. And I guess memorizing, I mean, can be good. It's got its advantages, but
and here's a really hard thing. So on the NASCAR side, paint schemes change every week. Your garage walk is extremely important at that point because you have a different sponsor every week with most of these teams.
Where Mike with Super Dirt Car Series, these guys, they race those paint schemes year round. They don't change them until the next year.
Yes and no. But because I can give you two examples already from this year where if I hadn't walked the pits, I would have been in trouble because JF Corvo was driving Matt Shepard's other car. The numbers are different colors. That's the only reason I can tell them apart. So I had to go in and be like, hey, Matt's got the black numbers, JF's got the white numbers. And then there was another car, I think it was Corbin Miller and Dexter Stacy, I believe, down in Florida. Identical paint schemes. I'm like, hey, can you guys do me a favor? Put a yellow stripe on the top of one of them, just so I can make sure I got which one's right. And they were willing to do that because they wanted to make sure they had their name correct and everything.
And that's a class move, Mike. That's a great call. I would never, as an announcer, go, hey, I need you to do this for me. That's a great idea, though. It's an amazing idea. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but it's not only that. It's, I mean, now we're at the age where obviously transponders take care of everything. But what if the transponder system goes down? Yep. Well, whoever has to hand score it, you need to be able to tell the difference. So it's for everybody. It's not just for me in that situation.
Yep. Is there backup hand scores for World Racing Group at every race?
Not as of now, because we bring our own guy in. I'm sure if we had to go to it, we could easily change over.
Right.
But right now, there's not really a backup.
Okay.
So we got about 15 minutes left. Anybody that's got questions in the chat, if we got a couple that came through. If you got any more, feel free to add them in there. So announcing, you guys both are announcers on a full-time, not full-time, I mean full-time series tours. Getting to travel to all these places. How cool is it getting to just get to travel, the traveling experience, get to see all the different sites, get to meet all the people from all the different tracks, all the different drivers and families and stuff like that. You guys are traveling announcers. How cool is it? I'm kind of a local guy, but you guys are on that tour weekly. How cool is it?
It's a lot of fun, but and one thing I know, I think I mentioned to you, Brady, but I'm still, when I'm not announcing Super Dirt Car Series races, I'm still doing the PR for the late models. So I am all over the place. There's going to be a few weeks where I'm not going to see home for about a month, which is going to be fun. But I love going to all these different new tracks, meeting these new people, the coolest thing the last 2 years was seeing new parts of the country I've never seen before. You know, and I'm sure, Brady, you understand this, you're locked into a couple tracks on a Friday and Saturday night. You're really not being able to travel to go to some of these events. You know, getting to go to the Dream, the Eldora Million last year, you know, big events like that, PDC. That's been some of the coolest things because once you branch out a little bit, you see atmospheres you never even know existed.
Yeah, 100% agree. I've announced in 47 states between dirt circle track racing, monster trucks, NASCAR, just NASCAR at track announcer for NASCAR, not MRN, but it's interesting to meet people from all walks of life. It brings me back to something that's kind of funny. So I was telling my dad the other day, you know, people are like, well, you know, come out to upstate New York. Those people don't know how to drive at all. Nobody knows how to drive anywhere. Like
that's a fact.
It's not like everybody thinks that their little corner of the world is special for this one reason. No, the weather is horrible anywhere, anytime. Everybody stinks at driving. It's awful. I've driven across the country, crisscrossed. People are losing their minds knowing how to drive. It's non-existent anymore. Airports are horrific. It's just, you know, I don't want to downplay it. it's not, it's kind of like you want to say that, hey, wait 15 minutes and the weather's going to change. Dude, that's everywhere in the entire country all the time. But I don't want to downplay it. It's great to travel. There'll come a time I won't, as I get older, and but all those building and announcing careers has been super, super weird for me. Like, I've done circle track, dirt, monster trucks, dog shows. I mean, there's crazy things I've announced. They all pay, so I'd go. I think that as you become a career announcer, this might be, something for you, Brady, and we've talked about in the past that if you want to make a living as an announcer, there's going to be a time where you're going to have to say no to the thing you love and yes to the thing that pays bills. And that's a super hard decision, because, eventually you get married, you have kids, you have mortgage, you have this, you have that, a vehicle, and well, we'll give you $300 to come announce. Yeah, but the dog show in Nebraska pays $1,200. I got to go. That, and it's still developing your skill set, but at some point bills have to take over. And I mean, you're not there yet. You're 17, about to be 18, and building your brand right now. But at some point you got to go. Yeah, that's follow money.
Absolutely. I guess I'll leave it here with this as our final quote, or as our final conversation. Getting to announce, like, getting to inspire fans and fans coming back to the racetrack knowing that you're the one that's, like, in charge of it. Like, they hear you every night. Is there one thing that you guys have, like, taken from that makes this so special? Like, being that person, knowing that person's going to come back each week because they're hearing you, and then they're watching the racing as well. Like, how do I word this a little bit better? Help me out.
So what you're trying to say is that you're the voice that they're used to hearing. You're the fact guy. You're the fun guy. And what does it feel like having fans come back to a comfortable announcer? It's like it's family.
And knowing that they can come and chat with you anytime and know who you are. How cool is that?
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, for me right now, I mean, it's a cool feeling, but I'm still finding my footing, because the shoes that as you guys know, the shoes I am trying to fill right now are about the size of my apartment.
Hey.
And there's still people, and it might take 1, it might take even 2 years that I'm not Shane Andrews. I'm Mike Warren. I have my own style. I have my own everything. But one
that's
thing,
okay.
go out and do it your way. It's your show. Have fun and enjoy it. And that's the biggest thing I can do. And, I have enough people, like, there was at least 30 people I haven't seen in a while. It's like, having conversations with fans and stuff, even at Bridgeport, which was kind of surprising. And, when I come back home for the few races, I mean, it's going to be even more. But it's pretty cool knowing that. But like I said, there's still a long way to go.
Todd?
Yeah, what's neat is, so Scott Douglas, the
Monster Jam
announcer, I went through their training and stuff like that. And he said 2 things. He goes, you're not the star. The cars are the stars. The trucks are the stars. So if your head gets too big, people will see that. And ego has no place in an announcer's booth at all. I'm a firm believer that no one is a co-announcer. No one is a secondary announcer. No one is an assistant announcer. If there's a team of guys or girls or whoever, you're all announcers. Those labels tick me off when I hear them. But he said in the same sentence, he said, you are a ringmaster. So you can control a situation, make a situation fun. And sometimes you have to deal with very bad situations. So you have to know when to be quiet and lay out because medical things are happening, and then take your direction from your promoter that, hey, this is what's to be said. That's it. Nothing gets posted. You don't say any more. Either we move on with the night, or we're going to go ahead and close it down tonight. Thank everyone for coming, and things will be explained later. But I don't think anybody comes to a racetrack to hear an announcer. If you can leave the night being informed by the announcer, have a little bit of fun, and the announcer isn't horrible and screws everything up, the racing should be the thing talked about, not the announcer. Nobody comes to see the announcer. We're just there to relay information, have a little bit of fun. And if you're not talked about as an announcer after a race, perfect.
Absolutely. I guess because we still got a little bit more time, I have two more topics that just came to mind here. So being announcers, we've all paid our dues. Like when we all started, I just started a couple of years ago. We were volunteering. You, Mike, I'm sure you volunteered when you first got started. Todd, I'm sure you volunteered when you first got started. How important for like the next generation is it for volunteering for just being at the racetrack in general as a race fan, like a younger race fan, say a 10-year-old kid that to volunteer at a racetrack? How important is volunteering right now, especially in a time when these like businesses and tracks and stuff, they need all the help they can get? How important is volunteering at a racetrack to get your foot in the door?
Mike, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. To be honest with you, I've volunteered for race teams before to help with things, to learn cars, to understand all that kind of thing, because those are small operations. I get that. As a race announcer, I've never volunteered, but I've volunteered to do some pit area work for the main announcer. I talked to the promoter, hey, can I get a pass in to the track? I know that this announcer is really good. Can I do some legwork for that guy pre-race to help him with notes, to help with information, whatever he needs me to do, a runner, and then end up watching the race? That's my volunteer experience to get that experience, I guess. But when it came to being a track announcer, I haven't volunteered. Even if it was, back in the day, $75 at Dodge City Speedway, I still had to, pay for my gas to get there and all that kind of stuff. And they'd throw me a hamburger. So, but on, the volunteer side, I've heard other conversations that you need to work for free for 6 months. In what job does that ever happen?
Yeah.
So looking back as a 14 to 16-year-old, I would do some stuff for the announcer to help him pad his notebook and things like that, get some interviews for him so that he had more information, and then I would watch the race myself.
Okay. And then my final topic before we close out Facebook Live, the racing announcers group in general. Of course, like I said, Justin St. Louis came up with the idea a couple months ago, and it just hit 100 members yesterday. But getting to be a part of that, and meeting all the new announcers and kind of working together, just kind of talking about the trade. What's your guys' thoughts on it?
I enjoy being able to see and talk to guys, from all over the country, because you never know, like you never realize how many of us are actually out there. And there's guys I've tracks, places I've never heard of. And it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of them already. And, that roundtable we did in the past was awesome, just to all get together and talk about some different topics. But I think one of the biggest things is we can all learn something from each other. You're never done learning in this job. That is one thing for a fact. And if you think, to me personally, if you think you got everything covered, probably time to get out personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I concur 100%. What Mike just said there is 100% true. And I think that has to do with what I brought up earlier about ego. If you think you know it all, well, you have way too big of a head to be in this tower, because we all don't know it all. And we're learning all the time. I mean, look how many years, Ken Squire's been around and Dave Moody's been around and Mike Bagley, those guys, they've been around forever and they're still learning things. You got to keep an open mind for sure.
Absolutely. Everybody tuning in on the Facebook Live. This is the first ever Announcers Table podcast. Of course, I am Brady Hauser, Mike Warren, the voice of the Super Dirt Car Series, and then the Todd father, Todd Morey. He was talking earlier. He said when Rick Eshelman loosened it up, I really wanted to crack a joke and be like, yeah, he loosened him up too much, kind of turned him into a loose cannon. But Todd does it all, and he'll be making his debut with MRN Radio in July at the Road America Xfinity race. So best of luck to you. And Mike, keep doing what you're doing with the Super Dirt Car Series, and I'm sure we're probably going to run into each other here soon because I know you'll be coming to. I'm sure you'll be coming around locally, Albany, Saratoga. I'm sure I'll run into you, but I appreciate both of y'all coming on the show. Everybody tuning in on the Facebook Live. I hope you enjoyed it. Now we're gonna go close out the YouTube side of things. I'll have you two stay here just for a little bit, and so long, Facebook Live. And this is gonna get taken down off the Facebook page, and then it'll be reposted on YouTube. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, YouTube. I just wanted to ask before we end this YouTube live, where can we find both of you guys? Todd, I'll start with you. Where can we find your social medias? What's your social medias at?
Yeah, just at Todd Morey on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I don't use TikTok much, but I'm there as well. I probably need some help from Brady on TikTok because he's way better.
You're too loose of a cannon to do that.
I have fun with life.
And then Mike, where can we find you?
I don't even know what the Facebook name is, to be honest with you. It's just there.
Michael Warren.
Just look for Michael Warren. You'll find it. At Sport Mike Warren on Twitter. And like Todd, I'm on TikTok, but I really don't post there. Really, I'll be the first one to tell you I only downloaded TikTok because my girlfriend kept sending me them, and it was just a pain to keep opening it through the browser.
And then I got to mention it here quick. Here's the Cletus McFarland wreck. I'm not going to show that. I was going to show that, but I got to mention it quick to everybody that's watching because this is the first podcast we had in a while. I just created my own website. All my social media links are there. So if you want to go over to my website, it's bradyhauser05.wixsite.com/out-of-the-fast-lane. I know it's kind of a long IP address, but Wix is a little difficult with that, but it's got all my stuff on there, so you can go check that out. Or you can just follow me.
I'm sure that website was super easy to build.
Todd, you've been on the building. It took me 3 weeks to make that website. 3 weeks. It's not. And websites are not that easy. And I gain a lot of respect for the people that do it. I mean,
well, you did it, and I did not. So good for you.
It takes a lot of time, that's for sure. But y'all can go check that out. And if not, my social media links are on my pages as well. But I appreciate you two coming on the show. It's been fun, and I'm sure as this series kind of builds, and we'll see how popular it gets with the people. Might have you guys back on with other people, and we'll see what else we can chat about. But anyway, this has been the first Out of the Fast Lane Announcers Table podcast. So I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you all on the next one. Have a good night.